Welcome back to Zach Archer TV, where I talk all things movies, television, and reality TV. And it's that time of the month again. I'm here to rank every movie I watched for the first time in the last month. All right, we're talking about March 2025 here. Previously, I did my first ranking for February, and that was a big whopping 26 movies, and that was right when I was in the thick of the award season, watching a ton of award movies. A really stacked list from almost top to bottom. This one definitely not as strong comparatively. There's some much more weaker additions, but there's still some good ones, and I'm looking forward to it. As always, it's a mixed bag any month because it's not only just new movies that come out, which is already pretty random, but it's just whatever movies I happen to watch in that month. So, number 10 on this list might be a lot better or worse than number 10 on another list for another month. So this month I watched 18 movies, not quite as much as the previous month, but considering the award season was done at this point, I wasn't watching any more for the purposes of the Oscars. That's still an impressive number, especially for me. And I find myself at 48 movies watched at this point, and my goal for the year was 50. So here we are. We're exceeding all expectations. Let's kick it off. Number 18 is The Electric State. The Electric State is directed by the Russo brothers, and it stars Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Ke Huy Quan, Jason Alexander randomly in the mix, Giancarlo Esposito, Stanley Tucci. There's a lot of, it's a big cast of big names, and it's so random. Woody Harrelson is Mr. Peanut. This movie's been talked about to death if you're following new movies or any film critic channels, in terms of it's a Netflix movie that they put $300 million into, one of the most expensive movies ever made, and the disparity from that and the quality of the film is quite vast, in my opinion. I think it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough to watch. It's I found myself, the biggest thing that's most egregious for me these days in terms of movies that I don't like are if I don't care about the characters. And this is a prime example of I didn't care about any of the characters. Even in the more emotional moments, there was no real emotion. I wasn't invested in these characters. And I know that the one thing people often credit this movie for is at least it looks good, like the effects and whatnot. But even with that being said, I just really don't like this aesthetic, to be honest, of the CGI robots mixed with live action humans. I think it's a pretty tired aesthetic, so I didn't think it was a fun movie to look at, even in a technical aspect. I hated the designs of the robots where there's a person's face on a screen on top of those ones. And the story in general was just not very interesting to me. And from all accounts, The Electric State, the book that it's based on, is pretty compelling, and people seem to enjoy that quite a bit. And people who've read that book apparently are pretty surprised with how it turned out, considering that. Here's the thing. Chris Pratt plays the same person he's always played, and I'm not a fan of actors who play the same kind of performance over and over again, even if it's in bad movies and they just keep doing it. So he didn't work for me, and I didn't expect it to really do much for me there. But Millie Bobby Brown is my only experience with her was in Stranger Things, and I remember the big talk, especially early on in Stranger Things, wow, that's a brilliant young actress, that she's gonna have so much potential and gonna do some great things. And I totally agree with that. But what we're left with here is, I think, pretty bad performances from almost the whole cast, and some likable actors in here. Stanley Tucci is fine, he's good, but again, I didn't care about any of the characters. Millie Bobby Brown, I thought there were some pretty rough moments, actually, and Ke Huy Quan, they really didn't do much with him. It was just rough. It was rough all around, and it's not even a fun movie to talk about. That's the saddest part of it. There's not much interesting to talk about either. It's just the fact that it's a huge budget blown on this movie a star-studded cast, and for what? Just completely wasted. Number 17, Snow White, 2025. This one was like, ever since it was announced, I was like, I don't expect it to be good. I have such low expectations. But I was holding out hope as we got closer to release. It's like maybe the music, because they had the one song in the trailer that sounded good, and maybe the music would be enough to make it fun. They could do some things to elevate it. After watching the original Snow White, I was like, okay, there's definitely a lot more depth they could add to the story if they really wanted to do something with it. I never would have taken Snow White, the original, and made a live action version of it, because especially having just watched it, the 1937 original, all the best parts of that movie are due to the animation, the timeless animation. So much of it is due to the expressiveness of the animation. It's only possible with that animation. The animals, the dwarves, and everything. The plot itself, there's nothing really there that to care much about. And that's not what you watched that movie for. It was really like a showcase more than anything. And to take that and suck the life out of it in so many ways, and make weird decisions in terms of, you want to do a live action movie, but kind of half-ass the dwarf thing. You don't want to cast little people, but you also don't want to do animation because it's a live action movie. So we end up with this weird, terrifying CGI dwarves that they're very unsettling, and the complete opposite of the original. They are not a highlight of the movie at all, and it's really hard to overlook just how terrifying they are. And they also strip them of a lot of their personality. Gal Gadot, it's been talked to death. She's not a very good actress here. Rachel Zegler, I thought, was serviceable, but even still, wasn't blown away by her performance. She was also working with other people that weren't giving much. You know, the guy, Andrew Burnap, who played Jonathan, that character did nothing for me, but he was eh. Anyway, this is so weird. I feel like last month I barely talked about anything negative. They were almost all really good movies from top to bottom. So this is such a contrast. I don't really like talking negatively about movies if I can avoid it. This one is just hard to deny how the pacing was weird. Some story decisions were kind of weird. It just didn't work as a cohesive product. They did these weird 7 bandits in the mix, and there's this weird, it feels like an out-of-body experience where they cast a little person for one of these bandits, but all the dwarves are CGI, and there's actually a scene where the little person interacts with them, and it's very weird. And it took me out for a bit. I was like, I don't know what we're doing here. But for what it's worth, the Waiting on a Wish, that song, it hits. It's really good. Some of the other songs, not so good. The original didn't exactly have the most iconic songs in the world, so it's not like it's a slap in the face to the original in that way. But some of the songs were just not great. Whistle While You Work, they worked in the Doors a little bit. Wasn't a huge fan of that part, but overall I think it sounded more interesting than the original Whistle While You Work. So it's like, yeah, even with the music, it didn't do enough to elevate anything. And yeah, we did a whole review over on Tarkaron YouTube channel, TARQARON, where we do a lot of movie reviews and do a lot of live action Disney remake reviews as well. So you can check that out if you want more of my thoughts. And as always with any of these, I have letterboxed reviews for every single one. Every movie I watch, I'll write at least something for. Number 16, Mean Girls, 2024. I love the original Mean Girls. I think it is pretty timeless. This one, while it's not the worst movie in the world, it was just that it felt really unnecessary. And the whole time I was watching, I couldn't help but feel like, wow, we were really just rehashing almost beat for beat the same story, but with just different actresses, weirdly. And then a couple little modern jokes mixed in, but not enough. And then they randomly break into song, which while some of it was kind of cool, there was like a rock opera vibe to some of them I appreciated. I just overall felt like it just was unnecessary, and yeah, it just didn't work for me. Number 15, The Woman in the Yard. This is a new film that I just saw in theaters a week ago. and it's a horror thriller type film about how a woman just shows up in the yard one day and is just sitting there in this like shroud, and everything that ensues from that. And in some ways, I liked it. I liked some kind of the symbology that goes into some of the decisions they make. I get what they were going for, but overall, it was just kind of a meh film at the end of the day for me. It didn't do too much that I think will be very memorable or will really stick with me. Number 14, Maria, 2024. This is directed by Pablo Larraín, and it stars Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie, beautiful, graceful performance. I'll give it up for Angelina Jolie. She kind of is the movie. You're watching her, so much on her, and it's her. She plays Maria Callas, who was a hugely renowned opera singer, apparently. Ultimately, I think what it falls victim to for me, and why it doesn't work for me, I know there's like a mixed bag in terms of how people receive this movie. Some people really like it. Some people are more in my camp. I'm on the lower end only because I found it incredibly boring. And yes, Maria Callas it's based on a real person, but I found her to be generally pretty unlikable and not the most compelling to watch. So if that's accurate, I'm not sure to her as a previously living person. But yeah, it was ultimately just boring for me, and it's one of those things where it was pretty dry. There was no one I was really interested in character-wise, and yeah, but pretty impressive for Angelina Jolie, apparently, who she had to learn how to perform operatically and put so much preparation into the role. That's kind of the most I took away from the movie is seeing her talk about what went into her performance after the fact and things like that. But the movie itself just didn't work for me. Number 13, Queer, 2024. This is directed by Luca Guadagnino, and I'm ashamed to say it's another one, just like The Challengers, where I thought it was okay, and I was like, maybe on a repeat watch, I would appreciate it more. This one came out the same year, and I also was like, didn't work for me as much. This one especially, I think, has some people that are more passionate than Maria, but they're a very similar ballpark, and that's why they ended up in a very similar area on this ranking. It stars Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig was really the reason I watched this movie, because a lot of people felt like he was snubbed of a nomination for Best Actor at the Oscars, and I wanted to see it for myself. It's a good performance, and that's really what you watch the movie for. Where the movie starts in the beginning, I thought it was going to be a very like sexual type movie, and that's where the focus would be, but it really takes on a different form in the second half, which did take me by surprise, but ultimately it didn't really work. It didn't really land for me in the way it might have for other people. I thought it kind of dragged, and we're ultimately following a man who's dealing with substance abuse and things like that. Substance abuse and some drinking problems and whatnot. And it is like, I get it, and I get what they were going for in certain areas artistically, but it just made for not very fun watch for me, and wasn't too compelling for me. Though I do appreciate what they were saying about this particular man's experiences and kind of the LGBT experience of like the 1950s where this is set, especially, and that kind of identity issues that go into that with the two main characters here. So yeah, it didn't fully land for me, but I do appreciate some aspects of it more than the others I ranked lower. So that's why I ended up right there. Number 12, Hot Girls Wanted. This is a documentary from 2015. It essentially looks at young girls and like a part of the porn industry, which kind of funnels in younger girls, like straight up 18, 19-year-olds, going right into the industry. So it follows a couple of them in real time as they're dealing with different things with the industry. It's definitely sheds an important light on some of the sketchier aspects of the industry, and how it's like, especially it was tough to watch for me in a lot of parts, and the especially tough one part is the all the talk of the abuse porn, and how this one girl had to do some scenes. One of them was okay with it, one of them was like kind of uncomfortable with the situation. So there's a lot going into that was really uncomfortable for me to watch. And then you just like, it was crazy how casually like this one guy who's kind of like the ringleader of hiring these young girls into the business. He talks about like essentially how there's such a short shelf life for these girls, where it's like, oh, they'll get a good like 3-6 months, and by then we'll be looking for new young girls to replace them, kind of thing, like in the industry. And yeah, it's tough. I have it pretty low because I think it's hard to recommend. It's not a fun watch. There was nothing fun about it to me. And documentaries aren't always going to be fun. Obviously, a lot of documentaries cover heavier issues, and that's kind of the beauty of them. And I appreciated how raw this documentary was, but it's just tough for me to recommend. It doesn't do enough, like, in terms of like its actual presentation, editing, to make it a top tier documentary that makes it worth enduring the kind of bad vibes. But it is what it is. Number 11, How to Have Sex. So I stumbled across this movie because I was looking up how to have sex over and over again, really trying to find an answer. And this movie popped up, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll watch it. This title I don't think does the movie justice. Some people might even see the title and just be like, oh, tune in now. It's probably not for me. And it's really not what the movie's about. It's not anything in terms of like, I don't know what I expected when I watched. Sometimes I'll just hear a title of a movie and I'll just, all right, add it to the watch list just because that's interesting enough. If I hear there's some relative buzz around a movie, or if I just hear a title of a movie, I'm like, okay, and I'll just kind of go in blind. I don't know what a movie How to Have Sex is going to be about. I thought, actually, just from looking at it, I thought it was maybe a documentary type thing. But turned out it wasn't. It's a movie directed by Molly Manning Walker. I haven't seen any of her films before, but wow, I have to give it credit. It ends up on the lower end of the ranking for a couple reasons. I think the first half of the movie really just feels like nonstop partying and not much of substance there. It makes it hard to justify the entire product, but I also give it as much credit as I do and put it above enough movies in this ranking because I think the performance of, what's her name? Mia McKenna Bruce. Excellent. I think she was great. And there's some super vulnerable, uncomfortable moments in this movie. It takes you down a path that I was not expecting it to go down. Obviously going in completely blind. It touches on some pretty serious issues in terms of like party culture, and the societal norms that go into that, and how like young girls are put into uncomfortable situations. And there's one especially that's so brutal, and it's just tough to watch. The aftermath of it too, and how she's dealing with it, and you can tell she's not comfortable saying anything about it, and it's tough. So while the movie overall I didn't think was perfectly well constructed or paced particularly well, I think it's worth it to watch just for that performance and what kind of transpires there. I think it's an important subject and it's handled really well. I will say Lara Peake plays a character called Sky, who is one of the most unlikable characters I think I've ever watched in movies. And she's obviously not supposed to be very likable, but it's really tough because it's like, it feels like a very real movie. And this person, being the way she is, it makes her even more unlikable than if it was some fantastical fictional story or hyper fictional story with an unlikable character. Like hers is like, it felt realistic, so that's why it was harder. Number 10, Sugarcane. This is a documentary from 2024. It follows an Indian residential school in Canada, and apparently a lot of reports of abuse and missing children over the years. And it's kind of like a subject that hasn't been addressed. It was kind of like covered up in certain ways and pushed to the side and not really spoken about. And it's about them trying to bring it to light in some ways, get some acknowledgement for it, and going into the details of what some of the kids might have endured there and some firsthand accounts from people there. This again falls right here in the middle-ish range, only because it is a little dry and a little slow at points, and so it's a positive and a negative. I think it's very intentional in certain ways because it's very raw. It wants you to it presents the information as it is, some real stories, some hard stories, and there's no sugarcoating it, there's no dramatizing it. It's raw, and so that lends itself to it makes the information itself hit a little harder, but also makes it a little drier than I would have liked as well. But again, it's one of those documentaries where it's not about getting me to have a lot of fun or be super into the movie. That's not what the documentary is for. It wants to put this story out there, just in the way that the people in the documentary are trying to get the word out about this tragic story. That's really, I think, the purpose of the documentary. It's not to break any new ground in terms of filmmaking or entertainment. So I give it credit. Absolutely well-made documentary. Number 9, Eyes Without a Face. This is a movie from 1960. It's a French film, I believe. And this was another one I knew nothing about, but the image of the film was just so striking. Even if you see this movie poster right here, like, isn't that a striking image? But then if you see the actual actress, a screenshot of that's even more like, whoa, like, what's this movie about? I gotta check it out. And it's cool. I know some people are really high on this movie, and it wasn't quite that for me, but there was some stuff I appreciated about it, for sure. The vibes, it was really cool. I thought the score was quite inspired for a movie of this genre. It's very unorthodox, and I think that works for me. My biggest takeaway is really Christian, which is the main character. Just the striking images of her without a face. It's Eyes Without a Face is the name of the movie, so there's something going on there. I'm not going to give any spoilers on any of these movies, but just some really striking images that are like unsettling in very different ways, and how things unfold are pretty satisfying. Just a really interesting it's kind of a small story, and it's handled pretty well. I'm just not as blown away as some people were by this film. Again, it's another one where I might appreciate more on the rewatch. I'm not sure if I ever will, though. Number 8, Black Swan. This is a 2010 film by Darren Aronofsky, and it stars Natalie Portman. This movie was always on my radar in terms of a movie I knew that Natalie Portman was one of their best performances. I think she won the Oscar for this performance. And then when I watched The Whale, and I loved The Whale so much, I realizing that Darren Aronofsky directed that film as well as this one, I was like, whoa, let me check this out. And I gotta say, I was completely surprised by it. Again, this is the beauty of going in blind. I did not have any idea there was almost having just watched The Substance not too long ago, it was very much that kind of vibe in how it devolves. And it becomes more of like a psychological thriller than anything else. I literally thought it was going to be a movie about a ballerina, like just straight up. And then I realized when I was watching it, was definitely some deja vu going on. I definitely distinctly remember this was on TV at one point, but clearly hadn't remembered enough to know anything that was going to happen. And then surprise performances in there from Mila Kunis, and appearances from a minor role from Winona Ryder, and then randomly Sebastian Stan sighting. I was like, wow, there's a lot of surprises in this movie, and it's pretty damn effective, and I really appreciate it for what it was. Number 7, Edward Scissorhands. Speaking of Winona Ryder's here. And I think I kind of love Winona Ryder. I've always loved her. Having my first exposure to her, I think, was probably Stranger Things, in a much different part of her career. But I've always kind of loved her. And getting to go back in one of her earlier roles here, I loved her here too. But she's really not the standout performance. Obviously, Johnny Depp is the standout performance here. It's a weird movie. It's a Tim Burton film in 1990. There's an interesting story about it. There's some stuff I liked how comically it played out, and it was so effective in that way. I think just the little mannerisms of him, like fidgeting with his little scissor hands in different scenes, like really drive home the comedy in multiple parts. Just such a weird, interesting story. It's like kind of heartwarming, kind of a love story, even though I don't really get that much of the love in the mix. Like obviously that's what it is going towards, but that's not really what the movie's about. It's just like a whole vibe, and I feel like we don't get movies quite like this nowadays. But very interesting. Obviously a very young Johnny Depp, very young Winona Ryder. An interesting pairing here. And even the mother, which he interacts with for most of the first portion of the film, she's good too. It's just weird, and I do fuck with weird. I don't think I'm as big on it as a lot of people are, but I think it's one that I could definitely go back to as being like a cozy movie for me. Number 6, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937. I'm really surprised at how high this ended up on this ranking. Again, the list of films isn't as killer as the last month's, but even still, when I went to watch this movie, I expected it to be so dated that I wouldn't be able to get much out of it, or I'd be bored. And for me, it hit in a lot of different ways, and I ended up walking away really impressed. Like I mentioned before, it has a timeless animation style. I think is the biggest key, because if I didn't know anything about movies like this, if I wasn't this dialed in, and I just had this movie thrown on in front of me, I don't think I would immediately be like, oh, that's a 1930s movie, almost a decade or almost a century old movie. I don't think I would have pinpointed that, because I think the animation looks really good, and aside for the human faces like Snow White and the Prince guy, it looks really good throughout. There's not anything glaringly bad looking from it, and in many ways I think it looks better than Disney's Wish, which came out a couple years ago. Like, this is crazy that we've somehow strayed so far from this, that like we think we need to do 3D animation, we need to do live action remakes with CGI characters. No, we've completely lost the plot. Like, this is a beautiful movie, and I love just the animals were very fun to watch. This was like a feast for the eyes visually, a real showcase of animation. And the dwarves, I loved them. There were a lot of personality. They're the stars of the movie. They're what make the movie. The best parts of it is when you're just following the dwarves doing wacky stuff, and they have really fun personalities. And while the movie itself, the plot is not very interesting, the villain is not very compelling, and the love interest is barely a love interest. With all that being said, I still was very impressed by the movie. Number 5, The Sound of Music, 1965. Yeah, that's right. I had never seen The Sound of Music, and I really love musicals these days. So I've watched a good amount of them, especially movie musicals, and I'm just a big fan generally. I think they're so fun. And this is Julie Andrews. Great voice. Some great music in here. Some music I didn't even realize originated from this, The Sound of Music. It's a really sweet film. It really is. Like, it just The love story aspect of it didn't do much for me. As much as it's mind blowing to me, Christopher Plummer, who played, was it Edward Von Trapp? Captain George Von Trapp. He plays a standard sort of role, but it really kind of blew my mind when I realized recently that he also played the old character in Knives Out in 2019. It blew my mind that was the same actor. Such a huge, rich acting career. So I was blown away by that. But obviously Julie Andrews is the standout here. The children are actually pretty good as far as what they do in this role. And the story is just so, it's a kind of a quaint story, but it's really effective in how you can, like, you take these really strict father and these children who are made to be very regimented, but you break them out of that, give them a way to express themselves, and you see how much of a positive impact it has on them. So yeah. Number 4, Robin's Wish. Now this was a weird one to place as well. This is a 2020 documentary about Robin Williams and really the timeline closely surrounding leading up to his death. And it just hit for me emotionally. And it's hard with these documentaries. I don't think the documentary is particularly groundbreaking or anything. But at the end of the day, I have to give it up for the emotional resonance that it had with me. And I don't know how much of that is the film and how much of that is just Robin Williams and the person he seemed to be. And from all accounts on here, he seemed to be an amazing person. And he's just always been one of my favorite actors. And this has always been the one celebrity death that is like most impactful on me out of any of them. Like, I still distinctly remember when I found out that he had passed away, and it's still, I'm like still heartbroken every time I think about it. And it's just, wow, even all these years later, it's been a surprising amount of time, like over a decade since he's passed at this point, and it still feels like just yesterday. So this documentary is very effective at I think also shedding some light on how certain things were misinterpreted, even at what I thought about how his death, or like the circumstances around his death, I was wrong on some things. And I think it's important, Robin Williams fans, yeah, it'll be hard watch at points, but it's I think it's important to watch to inform yourself on certain things a little bit more as well. Number 3, The Menu. This is a movie I'd just heard by name. I knew it was a Netflix movie, or I think, okay, I don't know. Apparently, I think it was a Netflix movie. Like, I don't think did it go in theaters? All right, I have no idea. That's just the vibe I got. I feel like I always saw it on Netflix and heard the name of it. But it stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Fiennes and Nicholas Hoult. That right there, those are the 3 brilliant standout roles. Hong Chow, who I knew from The Whale and didn't realize, wow, she played the supporting actress in The Whale as well as The Menu in the same year those movies came out. John Leguizamo as a random role as well, which was really fun. But my biggest takeaway is those 3, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Fiennes, Nicholas Hoult, were all really great in this film. And it's such an interesting film. I thought it really was super captivating, and I was firmly seated for the entire film. I was all in. Ralph Fiennes' performance in particular really drives this film and the whole weird vibe about it. Midsommar is one I've heard this compared to, which I actually haven't watched myself yet. It's another one of the big ones I need to get to, and that maybe immediately add that to my watch list because this vibe was really cool for me. On a creepy level, it was really cool. Some of the parts at the end, some of the character motivations and how they ultimately wrap up the story, that didn't fully add up for me and wasn't very effective. But I loved the journey more than anything. I thought it was just really compelling. It's just well done. And also just worth noting how well they filmed food in this movie. This is a movie centered around like fine dining and a really high quality restaurant, and so they really made a point of shooting the food really well. Even just the editing and stylistic choice to put in the little menu shots between each serving, or between each course, was really effective for multiple different reasons. Maybe least of which is just really good shots of food. And it'd be, damn, that was a good cheeseburger. I'll say that much. Wow. Okay. Just worth watching. Go into it relatively blind, and it'll be an experience. Number 2, Black Box Diaries. This is a documentary from 2024 that was also Oscar nominated. So I'm still, even though the Oscars are over, there's still other like ones that were in the talks for award season that I'm still checking off slowly but surely. This one I thought was really effective, and I was just impressed by the story. I thought it was very inspirational. It follows Shiori Ito essentially trying to get her own sexual assault case. First of all, trying to get people to take it seriously, trying to head up the investigation herself when people were shooting her down. I think it was a very important showcase of like the fundamental flaws of Japan's justice system, while simultaneously really showing how brave and courageous she is. She just decided to make this movie. She written this book about her experience. She put her out there in ways that like you've never heard of. To the extent that it became like known, she was so known. It's like, oh, that's the girl that was raped. Like someone literally would say something like that in the documentary, like on the street. And that's just brutal to have that so much out there so much, and to see her as a person just being such a positive light for much of the film, and showing her spirit, her resilience, and her courage with everything was really inspiring to me. That's what made it so effective. And there was one scene in particular towards the back end of the film that really hit for me. It just was one phone call conversation, kind of a turning point moment in the film that was like, wow, that hit me on an emotional level that I did not expect. It was really raw, it was human, and shows how just a little compassion can go a long way. It was like beautiful, and it's like all you can ask for in a documentary right there. Number 1, DD. This is a 2024 film that I'd heard in multiple areas, people saying it's like one of their favorite films of the year, and there was like no award nominations for it at all. So I hadn't known anything about it. I just heard the name and like, wow, this is my favorite film of the year. I've seen the top 5 films of the year, like all over the place. It was such a surprise for me. I thought it was a really well-made film. First of all, I think the performance from our young actor here, Isaac Wang, really, really effective. He sold it. It's a coming-of-age film, and to have a young kid, obviously, at the center of it, it's key to make it believable, and it was fully believable. If you hadn't told me, or if we took out the super well done shot compositions and just directing in general, you probably could have convinced me it was an actual documentary. But another thing that was really fascinating to me is that it followed this 13-year-old boy in the year 2008. And in the year 2008, I was 12 in the year 2008. So this was remarkably close to the actual time period in which I grew up, which is kind of a wild experience to realize that, wow, they're actually having coming of age films from when I was coming of age. I guess my age is starting to sink in finally here. Like, I've always just viewed myself as such a young person, and it's just, yeah, years have been going by here. So we're now 2008 coming of age film is out, and it's really good. So I highly encourage you to watch it. Not much more else to it. It's a coming of age film, and it's done really well, and it deals with some different like relationship dynamics, and I think believable, realistic, and human ways and there's also some just fun comedic moments mixed in there, and it's just it's a nice film. So shout out to Sean Wang, who directed the film as well. There you have it. That's all the movies I watched for the first time in March. Again, a lot more stinkers as well as movies for me this month, which of course I want to strive to watch more and more amazing movies. I love talking positively about movies more than anything. It's what I'm passionate about. I don't want to have to. I don't love just hating on movies. That's not what I'm here to do. But if I don't like a movie, I'm going to tell you like it is. And that's just me. There's some movies I don't like, and some that were to me that are some of people's favorite movies from these years. And all the power to you. I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. This is my personal ranking each month. I'll be back next month with more. We'll see how many movies I watch then. As always, it'll fluctuate. The quantity and quality fluctuates each month, and we'll see. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos on the channel talking about movies, TV, and reality TV. Comment below your thoughts on any of the ones I named, or are there any that you've seen that you agree or disagree with my takes on? Sound off below. And until next time.